Protectors of the Grid, Chapter 14. Where to start? Ben, what would help you the most to know? Tara glanced over. Well, first off, have you ever experienced anything like what happened to me on Molokai? Tara smiled. Yes, and it was a profound turning point for me. Let's see. She shifted a little in her seat so that she could glance at both Ben and Charlie as she talked. My mind automatically goes to an experience I had as apprentice to Oscar Miro Quesada, a Peruvian-American who created what he calls PMT, or the Pachacuti Mesa tradition. Pachacuti, what does that mean? A Pachacuti is a world reversal, when the world turns upside down. The words are Quechua, the language of the indigenous of the Andes who escaped the Spanish conquistadores by going to live amongst the highest peaks, where they still eke out a minimal existence but have been able to keep their culture and spirituality less contaminated over the hundreds of years since. A Pacha is a world, Kuti is upheaval. Don Oscar combined tools and techniques from Peru's northern coast, the high Andes and the jungles of Peru, into the PMT to offer North Americans. It was to fulfill a promise he made to one of his mentors, who died shortly after that, to bring these spiritual technologies to Turtle Island. And that promise was made because of the prophecies received hundreds of years ago that the time would come when once again the eagle and the condor would soar together. And that means, well, there are many interpretations, but basically it means harmony and collaboration between North and South America. Some think the eagle represents mind and the condor represents heart. And this was before the USA was formed, right? Of course. The USA is not even 250 years old. The prophecy originated about 500 years ago. So the prophecy came before the US even had the eagle as the country's symbol, right? So how and why did you connect with this Don Oscar? The how is easier to answer. It was my friend Ellen. She knew what a struggle I'd been having with my police work. It was when we were working on the Dead Angels case. That one ripped out my heart and gut more than most because the victims were young girls who looked like angels. Always white girls, blonde with either blue or green eyes, often associated with a church. This perp thought they were demons in disguise, and the things he did were... Tara's eyes were squeezed shut and her jaw tight. Unspeakable. Things I wished to God I could unsee, she sighed. Ellen knew how I was struggling. She works for the department too, manages the evidence storage. She could tell when I returned them to evidence lockup how affected I was by the photos and stories of the case. After one victim even more awful than the others, I was just coming apart at the seams. I had been crying and by then didn't even care if anyone knew it, not cop-like at all, and Ellen stopped me as I was leaving the evidence cage. Tara, I'm going away in a couple of weekends for a retreat. I'd like you to go with me, if you want to. I think it will help you reconnect with your spirit. Tara took a deep breath, remembering. I was intrigued just by the idea of getting away for a weekend. My spirit? I didn't know if I was connected or not, but I decided in the moment to give it a try. So a couple weeks later, Ellen and I flew to Santa Barbara, where the retreat was to be held. Tara's eyes looked into the distant past. We walked into a room where a couple dozen people were sitting on cushions on the floor, each with what they called a mesa in front of them. Ellen briefed me on mesas. They are like an altar, and also sort of like what Native North Americans call a medicine wheel. Stones, feathers, candles, statues of deities, items from animal allies. Anyhow, when I walked into that room, the energetic vibration hit me like a ton of bricks. It felt like walking into a cathedral where people had prayed for hundreds of years. It was magical. I could feel the spirits, and I could feel the presence of the holy. So was this the experience you mentioned? Ben was a little disappointed. He couldn't see why what she had described so far would have such a profound impact. No, it was just the first step. I went with Ellen to another retreat like this a few months later. These weekend retreats are the form that spiritual apprenticeship has taken in modern North American culture. We don't live in villages with our healers anymore. Pretty much everyone works and can get away only on weekends. The system works, but it has its drawbacks. While you are participating in a teaching weekend, you feel so close to each other, have such a sense of community. But when you go back to ordinary life, you feel isolated. It's easy to question then. I remember feeling a strange sense of dissociation. What is a white Protestant feminist doing studying Peruvian shamanism? But it called me and it kept calling me. I started my own mesa and found that when I sat with it, I felt some release from the horrors I had to deal with in my police work. So it happened over time for me, experimenting with receiving energy, then sending it. Energy. Any particular kind? This was already stretching Ben's credulity, but he needed to know. The energy of love, Ben. Or you could call it the energy of healing. It's a form of prayer without words, and you send it through the mesa, which is an interdimensional portal. Still sounds pretty woo-woo to me, Tara. Maybe a way to deflect the pains of life rather than actually addressing them head-on, instead of actually doing something. Ben's irritation made his voice sound a little harsher than it had been. Tara was in no mood to be conciliatory. And you don't think the police work I do to earn my bread is doing something? Tara's fists clenched. Okay. So what difference did your new, practices make? And I thought it was a return to Molokai that brought you out of that crisis. Was this exposure to, what would you call it? Ben was backpedaling, but not conciliatory either. It's the Andean form of shamanism, Ben. Yes, going home to Kali and Simeona saved me. The Huna tradition is essentially Hawaiian shamanism. All shamanism works with multidimensional reality and the soul's divine template. I continued with Ho'oponopono as well. It's such a powerful technology. But I felt alone back in Arlington, and in spite of everything I could do to nourish myself, I needed support. It came in an unexpected way. Not repeating what I already knew, but asking me to open and to embrace compatible complementary teachings. And Ellen's friendship and understanding of the challenges of spiritual isolation helped me when I had to face another mutilated child's body. I learned that the differences between Hawaiian and Peruvian shamanism were cultural adaptations, and at the core, the spiritual principles are the same. Kinda hard to swallow, 'cause, Ben responded. He was so damn tired of stretching to wrap himself around all this energetic and vibrational stuff. You're sure this stuff, this mishmash of spiritual technologies you've learned, helps you? Yes, it helps. A lot. All traditions insist on letting go of expectations, but tracking, when possible, the results of our medicine work. There was a reprieve from the activities of the Dead Angels killer, a break in the pattern that has not yet resumed. Ellen and I found situations that seemed impossible shifting towards solutions with our mesa work. Some people with health problems improved. Some died. Tara flinched at Ben's skeptical grunt. Death is a form of healing too, Ben, though not necessarily our first choice. I did notice early on that as I kept my vibration higher, releasing grief, accepting love and support, and sending it out to everyone around me, I felt more connected to myself, to others, and to spirit. So what was the big deal experience you mentioned? Ben was ready to get to something more solid. Tara sighed. His process was so similar to what hers had been at the beginning.